What's going on? So I wanted to share with you guys how I've been getting more done, even as a person that's not detail oriented. I've gotten a lot of questions about this over June. So I wanted to give you guys a breakdown of kind of, what was able to be achieved. What are some of the tools, tricks, and tips that I use to achieve this? Some of the methods and everything like that, just in specifics, like give you guys a real detailed picture of exactly how I did it. So for June alone, with no AI used, so if I write copy with any AI, which I do for some of the email sequences that are templated, I don't count this, and that ended up being 321 pages of copy. So just blank Google Doc all the way through. I got personally 242 tasks completed. The team got more done as well. 327 hours worked, 4 new team members onboarded, 31 and a half hours working out, and 22 sales calls. So it was a pretty stacked month. And yeah, it was a really stacked month actually, but it went really well. And even on the last day of the month, I'm not tired, I don't feel like shit, anything like that. So I feel really good. I was really happy about the progress that was made. And just for context, so I am in the lowest 4.5% of detail orientation and what they call like general follow through, right? So this is a personality profile. I'm called a daredevil. The green dot is my detail orientation and follow through, also known as conformity. This red line is the mean. So if you know anything about bell curves, this would be like the peak of the bell curve. This would be the normal. Each one of these numbers represents a half a standard deviation. So I sit here. I am that's one standard deviation and then one more standard deviation. So I am just over 2 standard deviations below the mean on detail orientation. Now, if you look at a standard deviation curve, that puts me at -2 standard deviations. 95.5% of the data lies in between that, which means I sit at the lowest 4.5% of detail orientation, of conformity, of follow through as just the general population. So definitely didn't used to be like this, but yeah, but I'm here now and it's been working really well. So I'm going to go through, it really comes down to just like 5 things. So this 90-year plan, which I'll talk about, which came from Upgrade and William Lamb, and then like what I would call my monthly base blocks, weekly planning, daily structure, and then how I use my weekends. Those 5 things have really just made a massive difference. And I'll show you like my calendar, how I organize that to stay really effective. But let's start with the 90-year plan. So at Upgrade, they do this thing called it's a 90-year timeline, right? So you can see starting here in June of 2024, I go monthly for this year, and then I like to include 1 month of the next year, and then I go annually for the next decade, and then I go into a decade by decade. I'm not going to pull all these out, but by doing this, it's really helped me see in a big picture. In reality, right at like about the 10 years, so about 20-year mark, I started to really struggle with what I wanted to do. And when I pushed past that and kind of pushed those limitations, I got really clear about who I wanted to be, not just what I wanted to do, but who I wanted to be, what legacy I wanted to leave. And it was really interesting to watch that play out. So when you do this, you start to understand that actually a lot of the goals that seem really difficult today are super simple if you just follow through this process. And then in each one of those goals that sits inside of that, I anchor a reward to it. So when I achieve X, I will get X, right? And what it does is it really starts to anchor in your unconscious mind this idea that, oh man, achieving these things can help me accelerate pleasure. So it's not a painful process. It's not like, oh, I'm just working to work. Like, yeah, I do enjoy working. So that does help. But also, I don't love the detail orientation type of stuff. I don't love the project management type of things. Anybody who's worked with me in the past knows that's definitely not my strong suit. So by anchoring these things, at 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years in the future, I'm able to really understand, wow, this isn't nearly as bad as I think it is, which is super helpful. So I would highly encourage that in the upgrade training launch, like they have a launch live training. If it's upgrd.com, so upgrd.com, they have the programs. You can go in there, look at the upgrade launch. They have basically where it walks you through that 90-year goal. I'm not sure if this is their only price. I think they have some other things. So you can go through and look at that. I just wanted to show you guys the website. By no means am I affiliated with them. It just helped me tremendously when I started moving forward and, accelerating the pace that I was able to operate at. So that's the 90-year plan. And then the next thing I do is I go into what's called like a monthly base block, right? So if I pull up my calendar, you can, if I go into this week, basically how I look at my monthly planning is I go through each month at the beginning of the month. So tonight I'll do it for all of July. I look at all the weekends I violate, I look at all the days that I violate. I block that out. Any of the nights, any of the things like that, I block those times out. So it's in my calendar and it makes it really easy to plan for. I look at any of the holidays that other people might not be working, whether or not I'm working, I lock those in there. And then I like to alternate about every other weekend. I'll pick one day to do something that I really enjoy, right? It could be dirt biking, it could be wakeboarding, it could be traveling, anything like that. So when you map that out, it gives you kind of like a base framework to work in within the month. And I realized that to be really important for me because no longer do I wonder like, man, when am I going to have a break? Or, oh man, when am I going to be able to fit this in? Or anything like that. I just know exactly when I'm going to be able to do it, which helps me kind of push through there. And then the biggest thing that I realized a few months ago was if you're going through like cash crunches or if you're just going through scaling, so how we run one of our main, almost how we run every offer except for like one or two offers is we cover the ad spend. So as we scale up, our cash gets compressed because we're paying for leads, right? We're paying for the ad spend and then we recoup the money at the end of the month. And there's profit there, but it's also maintaining and operating a business throughout there. So what I see a lot of businesses do is when they start to scale, they start to focus too heavy on systems, processes, and hiring and not enough on revenue generating activities. So I like to always know at the beginning or at the end of the month, like what my revenue looks like for the next month, right? So any monthly recurring revenue, I try to be conservative about our lead gen fees. Like what I'll do is I'll go through and I'll say, okay, this month we generated this much profit from lead generation. Next month we should generate the same, but in reality, it's a 50 to 75% expected value. And then this is how much it's going to cost in ad spend. This is when the ad spend is going to come out based on how much we're scaling each one of the clients. And I just map it out. I don't do anything special. It's just an Excel sheet. Like we run QuickBooks, we run our own accounting, we run everything like that. But just to have an idea of, okay, I'm going to close X amount of people, or each client has, I'll rank them in order of, or I just build out the list based on the days. And then I say, okay, this client or this prospect could close at 50% and it could be at a $20,000 product, which means he's really only 10,000. So then in one column, I have like total revenue. And then in another column, I have expected value revenue. And what it does is if you start to look at the expenses that are going to accrue with that, you can start to see if you're going to have a cash crunch at any point. That way you're not scrambling for sales and you just feel really comfortable investing in any of the other areas of the business, which allows you to, if you need to buy a new tool, if you need to invest in a new employee, if you need to give a bonus, or if you want to scale up ads, anything, you already kind of know where you're at. And then you can just benchmark against it, which is super helpful. And then at the end of the month, I also look through and I identify areas of improvement. So I call them AOI. And I look back at the last month. This is more of a subjective approach, but I'm like, man, what didn't work last month and what could I have improved on last month? Then I make a list. Like this month for me, it's been sleep, eating, and then I've kind of gotten on that like manifesting kind of like energy journey or whatever. So playing with that and seeing how that fits in, it'll be interesting. It seems to be working over the last couple of weeks. It's been like a new 2-week thing for me, but it seems to be working so well. So those three things. What happens with my sleep is a lot of times I'll work right up until I'm getting ready to go to bed. And then I try to get in bed like 5 minutes after I get off of my computer, which makes it really hard. So I'll go just get like a handful of CBD or melatonin gummies and like eat those and hope that's going to help me go to sleep. It does sometimes, but then I just lay there for like 30 to 45 minutes with my mind racing. And I'm like, fuck, this sucks. And then I get anxious about going to bed. And that's the worst. It's like being anxious when you go to bed is one of the shittiest feelings in the whole world. For eating, when I get really focused and like if you look through my calendar, you'll see that like there's some empty slots. Usually what that means is this actually went over and I just didn't pull it down. So I need to get better at that. But um, so what happens is in here, I don't have any eating, which is not ideal, right? Um, so making sure that I factor in eating because I think over the last 2 weeks, I've lost like 10 or 12 pounds isn't a big deal. It definitely wasn't intentional. And I can kind of feel myself at the end of the day. And I'm like, man, I wish I had like 100 Oreos or just something to eat, right? And I'll just kind of eat shitty things. Um, or I just won't eat and I'll just go to bed hungry. I'm like, fuck it, I'll just be fine. So that's a big one. And then like in the mornings, I've started implementing that like manifestation thing, which is, it takes me like 5 minutes. So it's been cool. All right. So got through that. Then weekly planning. So On Sundays, I go through our ClickUp board, and I'll show you what our ClickUp board looks like. This has been one of the biggest um, changes for me over the past couple of months. So I used to hate project management, and now what I do is we have a really, really detailed ClickUp board. In here, you'll see some of the things that we do. For the most part, like 95% of the projects are all on track. Anything that's off track is we could be waiting on a client for, which is just making it go off track, or it could be something that popped up from a meeting with a client. And while it's not critical to launch, it's still like I'll just place, an arbitrary date on it, and I try to hit it. So we're working through a little bit of that, but we have each one of our projects broken down, and we have a template that we run off of, so we know exactly what needs to go in each project. It goes in there, each thing gets detailed out. We have what it is, who's it's assigned to, the date, if it's urgent or not. And then we even have, I'm not sure where the columns are showing up right now, but we have what we call like the domain. And that is super helpful. So if it's copywriting, if it's media buying, if it's anything like that, see if I can pull up the columns. Whale. Oh, here we go, columns. And then we got our domain and subdomain. And I actually like to have those right after the assignee. There we go. And I'll save that. All right, so now I can see when I start to look at this, I can see, okay, so if it's assigned to me, and you can see most of the shit's assigned to me, and then you see the days, but then I can look at the production. I know if it's creative or video editing. Usually that's me managing our creative team. If it's strategy optimization, media buying, usually the media buying isn't me. And then the funnel building, we have a funnel builder for that. He's just now getting in ClickUp, so that'll be where he goes. And then I'll have copywriting. I guess we don't have any copywriting in there, but on this one, you can see copywriting in here. So whenever I see copywriting, or creative video editing, if I'm building static ads, it automatically triggers in my mind, like, okay, that needs to go in a deep work column, which is helpful. And then we have, profit process. That's just what each one of the clients have. But we also have our internal project right here. And then I actually started using these little emojis, which has been really helpful. You can kind of see, like, down here, we have our little check marks. And then if it's like getting ready to launch, it just gets pulled up to the top, which makes it super simple for me to know exactly which projects I need to look at first. But on Sundays, I start to look at, okay, boom, I got all this stuff. A lot of these things, we were just waiting for their team on implementation. That's all in there now. And I'll start to look at, like, what actually needs to get done. Am I running into issues? Am I running into bandwidth issues? This was really enlightening to me this last week, because for the first time in a long time, my calendar was 100% full. I was executing on it, like, every single task I had, and I still wasn't able to get everything done just because things were taking me longer. There was no delay, procrastination, anything like that. It was taking me a little bit longer, the volume of work I had. So restructured the team, went through a team meeting, started building out SOPs, really started to dial in, like, how we're going to scale that, because that's our next step to really start to take things to the next level. And then they have in here in ClickUp, if you download the phone version in ClickUp, there's something called a personal task. And basically what you can do in a personal task is, whenever you have an idea, I just click check and then idea, right? So today I was with Violet, we were at the zoo, we were at the beach, we were at the playground, getting her nails done. We were doing a ton of different things. And whenever an idea popped into my head of something that I needed to implement from a book I was listening to or a thought I had, I just click it in there. Then on Sunday, I go through that and I dissect everything that's in the personal list, and then I drop it under the main project board. But what it allows me to do is, one, stay present during my time with her, or if I'm on a sales call, or if I'm doing something else and something pops in my mind, I can just chart it down so I'm not losing it. But also, I used to be the guy with like 100 sticky notes or 100 notepads, or I had notes in Evernote, Notion, Notes, Microsoft Word, like all these different places. So things got really scattered. Now everything gets consolidated in one place, and then it gets built into a project. And then if I have a bunch of tasks that don't fit a project, then I know that I need a project, and I plug it in there, which is helpful. So this kind of goes into the daily structure, which I don't want to get too much into now until I jump into the day structure. But if you structure your days in a predictable way, when you go through and plan this, like, let's see, let me find one that has something coming up on Tuesday. So, all right, whitelisting. And this has a bunch of whitelisting stuff for tomorrow, right? But it's due tomorrow. So, um, basically, what I'll do is I'll go through there, and obviously, the whitelisting has a bunch of tasks that didn't get done last week, and I'll block off like however long I think it'll, or I already have the block in there for how long it's going to take. Or, I just have these set blocks of like deep work, execution, sales, calls, whatever. And then I just look and then I say, okay, this has to go on tomorrow. Boom, I drop it into tomorrow. And then I go back into ClickUp and I update everything, which makes it super simple for me moving forward. Um, and then, yeah, identifying overcommitment. I kind of already touched on that. One thing that I've had a couple of people ask me about recently was like, how long do you know how long something takes? I've been doing, I do a lot of like timers and things like that to just track. Like if I'm doing a bunch of new tasks, then I'll make sure that I track it. And what I do, the easiest way to do it is like, let's say, um, on this deep work thing, like I might have thought it was going to take an hour and a half, and then I'll just pull it down based on how long it actually took. So now I can go back and I can say, oh, I thought this funnel was actually only going to take like an hour, but it took 2 hours. Now I know moving forward. It might not be the most ideal situation in the moment, but as you get reps in it, it definitely solves some problems. So then I want to go into my day structure. And I think this has been really essential for me. I've gotten a really tight day structure. So basically, I wake up at 4. I always like to shower in the morning. So I wake up at 4. I take my shower, take all my vitamins, do all that stuff. I'm working by 4:30. I go deep work from 4:30 to about 11. We just implemented daily team stand-ups this week because the bandwidth issues I was hitting last week. So I haven't rebuilt my calendar template for this upcoming week, but I'll do that tonight. So then from 11 to 12:30, it's my team block. So it's every person on the team has a 15-minute daily stand-up with me so we can identify problems and they can bring them to me, or I can delegate some of the things that I've overcommitted to. And then that'll be super helpful. And then at 12:30, I'll go do my workout from 12:30 to 2, which is really nice for me to like get up and take a break in the middle of the day. And then from 2 to 7, I do all calls, any sales calls, any, Slack, daily template, or daily, any tasks that came up from the daily stand up, I'll drop in there. So I'll just drop it below. And then that's really helpful because, being on Eastern, there's a lot of people on PST that have their afternoons free. And I used to stop at 5, which was an issue because like I would have to push a sales call out a week or two. Well, you never want to push a sales call out. So now you have the time and the bandwidth to hit it. So then at 7, if I have Violet that week, then it's, I'll have my time with Violet from 7 to 8 or 7 to 9, like whenever she's going to go to sleep. And then I just kind of do a finalization of any low hanging fruit, and what I call overflow. That any tasks that didn't get done, I'll just go back through there, pick it out, and I'll do it. Um, and then, I'll wrap up around 10 and try to be to like, I'll shower and then go to sleep at like 10:30, something like that. Um, and you can see in here what I started doing about like 2 weeks ago. I started putting these emojis by everything. So if there's no emojis in here for the week coming up, like when I build my calendar out for this upcoming week, there won't be anything there. And then after I do each thing, I put a check by it. If I didn't get it done, I put an X by, and it needs to get done, I put a little alarm by it. And then I'll put an X by it if it's like time alone. I try to spend like 15 minutes by myself in the mornings, which hasn't worked out over the past 2 weeks. But I'll put an X, which means like it just didn't happen for the day, right? And whatever it could have been, like maybe the time with Violet went over, or whatever it was, it just didn't happen. And I even do this for like dates or days with Violet. So today I had a time with Violet and I had my whole day with her mapped out. I did it with her yesterday, I had the whole thing mapped out. If you're going on a date, boom, 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 boom. And what it does is it's just reoriented my whole entire life to live around this calendar, which is really good because it helps me stay so organized. And I'm never wondering what's coming up. I'm never curious about what's coming up. And then I can also, at the end of the day, if I have an hour left over, if I have a sales call cancel, I can just scan up. I'm like, oh, here's a red light. I need to do this. And then I'll use a hammer if I'm working on it. Like I'll just put that, so if I was like working on something and I didn't get to finish it because I had a sales call come up, then boom, I know exactly. I'm like, all right, cool. I need to finish that real quick because that's usually the fastest one to finish. Then I go to ClickUp and I check it off and it's all off, which is really helpful. And I mean, it has been like, I've been able to stack my weeks. like you can see that I've just been able to stack my weeks and it's been incredible. I've gotten more done than I've ever gotten done and actually gotten shit done. Like it's fine. It's one thing to put a bunch of stuff on your calendar. It's another to actually get things done. Like you can see, yeah, I'm not perfect by any means, but I mean, out of all those tasks, I had three that weren't done. Okay. I'm fine with that. That's not a big deal, right? Like that's just margin. Um, so that's my like kind of daily blocks, and that's been incredibly helpful. And then my use of weekends. So I know a lot of people think, like, man, with how much you work, you must never have any time for yourself. Well, on Saturdays, I just get up and I do like 3 to 4 hours of work, or I just will take the full day off. It just depends on how I feel and how much I slept. Um, and then I'll get up and whatever I do on the weekends, it's usually my overflow tasks. So I'm not trying to jam new things in there and I'm not trying to jam a bunch of strategy stuff in there. I'm just kind of trying to get some stuff done that I didn't get to get done throughout the week. That lets me go into Sunday with a really clear space with maybe 3 to 5 tasks that I didn't get done for the whole week out of what I got 260 tasks or something done like that this week. Or this month, I got um, 240 tasks done over this last month. So if I miss three a week, that's, a very small percentage. I'm very happy with that. And then Sundays, I like to block off out about 3 hours in the afternoon from like 6 to 9, where I just go in and I go through my whole to-do list, my personal list, and then I put the personal list into my project boards. And then I make sure that everything stays really cohesive. One of the biggest things, especially if you're running like an agency or a construction company or anything where you actually have like clients that can have revisions, I see a lot of people archive their projects and then you have to recreate the project. I always leave my projects open. I just pull them to the bottom until either we fire a client or the client fires us, right? But honestly, since I've been implementing this, we haven't churned a client in like 6 months. And for a marketing agency, it's typical to churn 10% of your client load every month. We currently have 27 different projects that we're working on with about 20 different clients. So 7 of those are either internal or they're 2 projects for one client. That'll be different. But out of 20 clients, we should be losing two a month, right? Just based on industry standard. And that's for incredible marketing agencies. Well, we haven't lost one client in 6 months. That's unbelievable, right? And I didn't even start implementing this until about 3 months ago. So that is a really, really critical thing to remember, that by doing this, I'm always on top of my communication with my clients. I'm always on top of my communication with my team. I'm always on top of the projects that need to get done. And I'm always plugging things into ClickUp. So if I see something that needs to get done or a client hasn't got done, I'm over communicating to the client and my team. Hey, we need to fix this. Hey, we need to get past this. Hey, here are some places that we need to move forward. Um, and then I think the other part that I wanted to touch on with the calendar is just when you run your calendar like this, there's a level of discipline that comes in place. Like if I'm not feeling something, but this sales like text all leads comes up, right? And I'm just not feeling it. The only way I get that check mark is by doing it. And now this check mark has become very synonymous with like a reward anchor in my brain. And I'm just like, fuck, I don't have any other margin in my day. If I don't do it, I'm just doing myself, my team, everybody around me a massive disservice. And what it's done now is I'm just in a flow state for a longer portion of the day and I just do it. And it makes these things seem really effortless because in reality, it goes a lot faster than you think it does. When you don't have the allotment of time blocked off, you don't really know how long things are going to take and you can have these task overruns happen, which feels like shit. So this has been really crucial to helping me dial that in. And then I'll tell you, like, a good way to do it is if there's something you really don't want to do, and you feel like they're like accounting for me. So whenever I need to do our monthly end of month accounting and invoicing, what I do is I anchor a reward to that. So it can be something as little as going to get food that I like. It can be, um, you know, just anything, right? Like you can buy yourself something, you can go get dinner, you can go on like a little micro vacation, you can take like 15-minute break, whatever you want to do, you just find something that you like that's not going to disrupt the rest of the flow of your schedule, anchor a reward to it, and then when you complete that task, you get it. So I'm going to go through last two pieces are going to be area of improvement and then the tools that I use. Um, Biggest piece of the area of improvement, like by no means do I think that I'm perfect or do I have this system down totally. There's a massive amount of stuff that I don't have down. And I mean, at the capacity and scale that our business is at, we should really have a lot more systems and processes than we have, which in the past, I wouldn't have seen it until it really started to negatively affect us. I'm catching it within the first week of it having any negative ramifications. And I've been this week, a lot of the reasons some of these projects didn't get done is because I was spending I didn't have the hours allotted to map out the SOPs or to write the SOPs, but I did them anyway because I knew how important it was going to be. And generally, SOPs aren't something I'm crazy excited about. So I just knew that if I did it right then, I would get past that initial barrier of not wanting to do something, and it worked. And then so yeah, biggest thing is like, by no means am I perfect, but the system has worked really well, and I've like 4x my productivity, my output, especially for somebody that isn't detail oriented. My project management has gone absolutely through the roof. But sleep for me, I kind of touched on that. The eating and the manifesting, like going back and looking at the places that you're lacking is really good awareness into the places that you need to fix, because especially if you're leading a team, having awareness into the things that you need to fix and then holding yourself accountable makes you able to hold them more accountable because you respect yourself more. So I have a very high value of my time right now. And when people start to waste my time, or if I have sales calls that, everybody has to do an application to book a call with us, I'll read through it. If they're not a good fit, I'll text them and be like, hey man, I saw this, like, I don't think we need to have a sales call yet because, here's our minimums, instead of just trying to close people in or getting on a call out of feeling polite, or if a team member wants to get on a call, but it could be a Slack message, I'll defer them to the Slack message. If it's somebody I don't want to talk to, I just don't answer the phone. And I mean, you can call it cold, you can call it whatever, but I have a high value on my time because I know how many people rely on me right now. I think our team's like 12, and then we have 20 clients. So it's 32 people. And then every person in their company is relying on us to perform. I don't have much margin for people that want to waste time. So identifying all of those things. And the last piece I'll say is tools. Using a tool like Culture Index. And if you don't have like an opportunity to use Culture Index, it's pretty expensive software. Getting really clear on like your Enneagram or your Myers-Briggs, or I know there's like a ton of them out there, but really looking into that, because just for example, like this A is autonomy, right? I am 1, 2, 3, 4, 4.5 on the standard deviation over autonomy, right? Or over the norm on autonomy. So if we go to standard deviation percentage, 4.5 standard deviations, that ends up being, for autonomy, I'm in the 0.00034% of the population for autonomy. So for someone like me to really have a desire to have a plan and a structure like that is pretty counterintuitive with my natural personality. However, what I realized was if I'm the one creating the plan, it's not really a big issue. And as long as I have autonomy over my schedule, that's fine. But that's really important because it's going to help me understand the clients I want to work with. Then I start to look at like my social, right? So I'm just over the line of social, and what they call me is strategically social. So basically, I only put myself in social situations if I think there's something for me to gain transactionally from it. You can call it shitty, you can call it cold, you can call it autistic. I don't really give a fuck. It's just how I am. Not a big fan of going to like big parties unless it's one for somebody that I care about, or if I think that I can close a sale at the party or build a relationship. That's just it. So I have a pretty, mediocre social battery, or I guess just normal. I'm not very patient, so I'm 1.5 times under the patience. So I get really frustrated when people take a long time to do things, and then my detail orientation is low. And then you see this energy unit's 34. Basically, if you have an energy unit that's like higher, that's where the red line sits. It means you have a high degree of behavioral flexibility, which is great. It means like you can switch. I don't have a high degree of behavioral flexibility, which is why it's so crucial for me on the weekends to really do something I love, because that really helps me reset. And for me, that's generally something that really drives my adrenaline. And that gives me this autonomy, really pushes that and alleviates a lot of the pressure that pulling this D all the way up does. Two last quick points. Logic, my logic's 9 out of 10. Basically, anybody that has a logic score under 5, I'm not going to be able to work with long term. That's a good filter for me, because if somebody's emotional at any point, I'm just not going to be able to work with them on the team. It's just not going to work well. And then ingenuity is 6. That's like decent, right? So I have pretty good ingenuity. I'm not Elon Musk. I'm not the most creative, but I also don't like to do things the same exact way. When you start to look at those things, whether it's a Myers-Briggs, whether it's an Enneagram, whatever it is, you're going to find your stress points. And if you can identify your stress points, it's not necessarily that you can get away from them unless you're really wealthy. Like I see a ton of people all the time like, I'm not an integrator, I'm a visionary. Like this is the most natural, like visionary profile you can get. Obviously, like massive autonomy, very low conformity. That is like one of the best leadership visionary profiles you can get. I'm not worth $100 million. So I understand if I want to be worth $100 million, I need to integrate up until the point, and I would consider $100 million a wealthy point. Like a lot of people would consider it a million. I consider it 100 million. I know people that are worth 100 million, and those are the people I consider wealthy, and I see what their lifestyle looks like. To me, that's wealthy. So if you think you're a visionary, but you're not worth 100 million or whatever your anchor point is, you probably need to integrate more because you're going to need to learn the infrastructure of how the business operates, and then you can work with a visionary who's hyper successful, who's done what you want to do, and they can feed back. Like that's why I love working with Josh Snow. He's very much a visionary. He's very much done all the things that I've wanted to do. And what he can do is he can bring an idea to me. I can filter the idea into the integration execution, and then I can lead the team to do it. And he doesn't have to micromanage me because I'm crushing it all the time. So it's so important to do that. And if you can't get a hold of Culture Index, Predictive Index has it as well. They have a good tool. Enneagram, Myers-Briggs. There's so many of them out there, but really start to drill into that just so you understand. Fantastical, I use it for my calendar. It's just my preferred method of calendar use. And then Trello for the 90-year timeline. ClickUp for project management. I've used every project management tool out there, from Asana to ClickUp to Teams to things for contractors to Smartsheets to Excel to Airtable to anything you can use out there. For me, ClickUp, while it took us a while to get it built right, has been the most intuitive and most well-performing tool. So if you will invest the time in it, I promise you it'll be 100% worth it. And then Slack for all communications. What that's done with Slack is I know like the moment that someone becomes onboarded with us, they have to go into Slack. And that's like a client rule. Like clients, if we have a client that's like, oh, I don't really use Slack, I'm like, then we're literally not a good fit. Because what happens is then it goes on an email chain. Then generally the CEO of the company, me, would become the bottleneck because I would have to disseminate all the information to my team. In my Slack channel, all my team members are in the client channel. So if a question arises, I don't have to go ask them for it. We use Trainual for our SOPs, and then Scribe How has been incredible. So if you want to bang out a quick SOP that isn't like Loom and you actually want some screenshots in it, 100% recommend Scribe How. I learned that from Scott Fielder. We use 90.io for all of our project management stuff. So I think, let me see. If we go into, or this is for like team management, I highly recommend this for anybody that's not running on Traction. I would definitely read Gino Wickman's book, Traction. It's incredibly beneficial. And basically what you do is you just go in there and you see all the issues, you see the accountability chart, and I mean, you can see like my face is in a lot of these different seats. So we're building this out where more people are in it, and now everybody's getting their SOPs assigned to them. But for the most part, now I actually have roles and responsibilities that I can hold everybody accountable for. And that has been an amazing thing, because when I see my face in too many of these slots, I start to realize like, oh shit, I need support, and I know exactly where I need support. That's been super beneficial. And then I have very objective measures to hold people accountable to. And then for CRM and all of our funnel building, we obviously use Go High Level. And we use Notion a lot. I'm a big fan of Notion. I'm building out a lot of our SOPs in Notion, and then I use Miro for all of our workflows, like those tools. Oh, and Funnelytics. I'm a huge proponent of Funnelytics for funnel mapping, because if I build a funnel map, I don't have to tell my team everything that needs to be made for the team or how it needs to integrate. I just tell them to look at the Funnelytics map. Boom, they look at it. Super helpful. And then I have that vibe board back there, which has been incredible for me because I like to draw a diagram, and then I take that and I turn it to a Miro board, and then the Miro board gets turned into Notion. And it kind of feels like double work sometimes or triple work, but it allows me to really synthesize any unnecessary steps throughout there. So hopefully this was super helpful. Hopefully you guys got a lot of clarity around some of the things that I've been able to do, or some of the things that I've been using to really increase my productivity. There's no like magic black hat tips in here. It's a lot of just stuff that I've tried over the last 10 years and figured out. And it all works really well. So I hope you guys like that. I'll drop all the tool links in the bottom section of this. And yeah, let me know if y'all have any questions.